If you're stuck in a cycle of doing endless cardio and falling for quick fix solutions that never deliver, then this episode is for you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Always Active podcast, the show that empowers you to lead an active lifestyle. I'm your host, Katie, and in today's episode, I'll be debunking common fitness myths that may be holding you back so that you can make real progress on your fitness journey. There's so much garbage and misinformation out there in the fitness space, and it can be overwhelming or frustrating when you follow this advice and find that it's really not helping you. Over the course of my fitness journey, there have been so many pieces of information that I once believed to be true and then later found out that they were fitness myths, and it really is all part of the journey. I'm constantly learning new things and unlearning misinformation through my personal experience as well as through my kinesiology degree. These 5 myths that I'll be sharing today are common myths for a reason, and so I don't blame you if you believe them because we're often misled, and so it can be confusing and overwhelming to receive this information, especially as a beginner. My goal today is to empower you with knowledge so that way you can make more informed choices going forward, and it can help you to achieve your goals sooner. I'm very excited for this episode. I hope you are too. And without further ado, let's get psyched to move. I asked you over on Instagram, how confident are you in your ability to identify fitness myths versus facts? And I asked this on a scale ranging from not confident at all to very confident. The average response was about 80%, meaning confident, which is great. And many of you were actually able to spot the myths that I shared when I quizzed you on them. But with that being said, there were still many of you who weren't able to spot the myths, which really highlights the importance of this episode. Because no matter where we are on our fitness journey, we all have more that we can learn. I'm going to be covering 5 myths across a variety of different categories. There's a lot to unpack today. And for each myth, I'll start by introducing the specific myth. Then I'll share what you had to say about it, whether you were able to spot the myth or not. I'll also share my personal experience with this myth, evidence to debunk the myth, and then practical advice for you to act on going forward. So let's dive into the myths, starting with myth number 1, which is you need to do endless hours of cardio in order to lose weight. Many people associate cardio with weight loss, and this is a super common misconception. When I asked you on Instagram, 93% of you were able to spot this myth, meaning that many of you understand that you can lose weight without having to do excessive cardio. This is a myth that I believed for most of my fitness journey as well. It's really only in the past few years that this myth has been debunked for me, and I learned this primarily through listening to the Mind Pump podcast, where they have explained time and time again the harms that cardio can cause for people who are trying to lose weight. So let's really get into debunking this myth. Yes, weight loss is mainly driven by a calorie deficit, meaning you're consuming less calories than you're expending each day. And yes, cardio does burn calories. I'm not denying either of those things, but there are 3 main reasons why this myth is not true. First of all, the amount of calories that you burn while doing cardio is very minimal relative to your total energy expenditure. Most of the calories that you burn each day are not coming from exercise. Your total daily energy expenditure mainly comes from other components. So you have your basal metabolic rate, which is the calories that you burn at rest. You also have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the calories that you burn through daily activities, not including exercise. So when you think of the course of a day and you think about the amount of calories that you're burning through exercise, it really isn't making a huge dent. The second point is that doing excessive cardio can actually increase your appetite. So this could make you more hungry and potentially cause a calorie surplus, meaning that you're consuming more calories than you're expending. And the third main reason is that doing excessive amounts of cardio can actually slow down your metabolism. Now, if you're starting from baseline and you start doing lots of cardio and reducing your calories, you likely will see a little bit of weight loss at the beginning. But over time, your metabolism might adapt so that it gets used to doing lots of cardio and eating less calories, and this becomes your new normal. Essentially, your body might become more efficient with fewer calories. And so when you reach this point, then you will likely plateau and your weight loss will stall. So then this would mean that you would need to be doing even more cardio and further reducing your calories in order to continue seeing weight loss results. And clearly, this is a problem because this is not sustainable. To further illustrate this idea of metabolic adaptation, I'm going to give the example of of the Hadza tribe in Tanzania, which is a group of hunter-gatherers that has been studied extensively. And as hunter-gatherers, they have a very active lifestyle. Yet, they only burn about as many calories as the average sedentary person. So, how is this possible? Why are they burning the same amount of calories as someone who is sedentary? You would think that because they have such an active lifestyle, they would be burning tons and tons of calories each day. But the reason for this is because their bodies have adapted to be able to conserve energy more efficiently. Our bodies are smart and they want to achieve a balance and be able to survive. And so, that is why we see this metabolic adaptation. So, overall, the point of me sharing this is that our bodies can adapt their metabolism, meaning there are limits to how much we can increase our physical activity and to what extent that will influence the amount of calories that our bodies burn. So, if this is the case, and it doesn't make sense to do more exercise and eat less food, then what would be a more practical solution to losing weight if that is your goal? First of all, prioritize strength training because this is going to help to build muscle and boost your metabolism. Also consider having a slight calorie deficit through your diet because this is a much more sustainable approach than through excessively increasing the amount of cardio that you're doing. And when you are in this slight calorie deficit, make sure that you are consuming a sufficient amount of calories and protein to support your strength training goals. You also can include moderate amounts of cardio in your routine. Cardio is not a bad thing. It's only problematic when it's overused. Cardio is a great thing. It's very good for your heart health. Just make sure that you're not overdoing it. And so by taking this approach, this can be much more effective and sustainable for weight loss. Myth number 2 is the more you sweat, the more calories you're burning. When I asked you to identify this myth on Instagram, 91% of you were able to spot this myth. This myth was debunked for me pretty early on in my fitness journey because in one of my first year university classes, I remember learning about weight loss gimmicks, such as sweatbands, which are these bands that you wrap around your waist that make you sweat more, and they're marketed to help you to burn more calories. But that's not true. Sweating is not an indicator of your workout intensity, and it's not an indicator of how many calories you're burning. It's simply your body's way of cooling itself off. That's it. And there are lots of different factors that can influence your sweat levels, such as the temperature of the room, humidity, your genetics, your fitness level, and the type of workout that you're doing. You absolutely can have an effective workout doing activities where you sweat less, such as strength training or Pilates. I won't deny that there is something psychologically satisfying about sweating in a workout. It can feel like if you're sweating a lot, you're having an effective workout, but it is by no means the be all end all, and it really isn't a scientifically backed way of indicating your workout intensity. So my practical advice is to focus on the quality of your workout and the intensity of your workout rather than how much you're sweating. This means that you don't need to go to the gym wearing a hoodie and sweatpants in order to sweat it out because this is just going to make you uncomfortable. So instead, wear comfortable clothing. Unless, of course, you do feel more comfortable in a hoodie and sweatpants, then go for it. But don't do this because you feel obligated to, because you think you need to sweat more. Also, do not waste your money on things like sweat belts. This is totally a gimmick, and it's really just causing you to lose water weight, which you will just replenish as soon as you consume more water. So there's no long-term benefit to this, and although I haven't personally used it, from my understanding, it is uncomfortable. So why make yourself uncomfortable just to sweat it out if that doesn't even mean anything? And then finally, don't go in the sauna or do hot yoga simply to burn calories. I'm not saying don't use the sauna or do hot yoga. I do both of those things because those have other benefits like improving your circulation, muscle relaxation, and mental relaxation. Just remember, there's no need to sweat it. Myth number 3 is that you need to consume protein immediately after a workout in order to build muscle. 65% of you were able to spot this myth. So more than half, but this was definitely the lowest out of all of the different myths when quizzing you and seeing if you were able to spot them, meaning that many of you were unaware that this is a myth. And then one of you said, I need to know your opinion and the science behind this. I've heard some people say it has to be right after, and others say before or after. And some people say just as long as you're eating enough protein throughout the day, the timing isn't so important. I don't know it's true. So we'll answer that right now. I would say that from my experience, I believe this for a long time, and it was actually very intentional about ensuring that I was getting my protein in immediately after a workout by eating either a protein bar or a protein shake. And it was only in my fourth year nutrition course that I learned that this was a myth. This myth does have some backing behind it, and it's because in the past, the research indicated that there was something called an anabolic window, which was a narrow window of about 30 minutes where you need to consume some form of nutrients immediately following your workout in order to build muscle and capitalize on this opportunity. But more recent research has revealed that this actually isn't the case. The anabolic window does exist, but it's not just the 30-minute window, and it can actually extend several hours following your workout. And if you eat protein immediately before your workout, then you can extend this window even further. I'm not denying that protein is very important for muscle growth and recovery. I'm a huge advocate for getting in enough protein each day. But my practical advice is for most people, the total amount of protein that you consume throughout the day is much more important than the timing of your protein intake, meaning that you should just focus on consuming enough protein throughout the day. And the general recommendation for protein is to consume 1 gram of protein per pound of your target body weight. So considering many people aren't even hitting this, that's step number one. That's what's going to have the most impact. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, then you could consider taking protein timing into consideration. And then another recommendation is to aim to spread your protein intake throughout the day. So don't just have one big meal with all your protein because that is very difficult to achieve. It's much more realistic and your body is able to better process the protein if it's consumed all throughout the day. The main exception to this is for elite athletes who are working out multiple times a day. They need to be more aware of this anabolic window because it is important for their muscle repair and recovery. Overall, there really is no harm if you have protein immediately following your workout, like getting in a protein shake or a protein bar, but you really don't need to stress about protein timing because it is not super relevant to help you achieve your goals. Myth number 4 is that lifting heavy weights will make you look bulky. And this myth is especially common among women, and it often discourages many women from lifting weights, which is a problem. Even though 85% of you were able to identify this myth, there were still 15% of you who did not think that lifting heavy weights can help you to build lean muscle. And so we need to unpack this. I would say that from my personal experience, I did recognize the benefits of lifting weights pretty early on. And so I never really experienced this mindset toward lifting weights, but I have seen many other women avoid lifting weights for this reason. I can absolutely acknowledge and validate that you have this fear, but I can assure you that this is not going to happen. Even if you really wanted to put on a ton of muscle, it would be extremely difficult to do so. First, the amount of time and effort that's required. Muscle building is a very slow, intentional process, and many people spend years trying to build muscle. It also often requires a very specific diet. Many women also don't have the right levels of testosterone in order to build excessive amounts of muscle very quickly. And also it's very dependent on your genetics. And I also want to clarify that there is nothing wrong with wanting to have a very muscular look. It's all so personal. If that is a goal that you want to pursue, then I'm all for it and I totally support you on that. I'm just trying to address the people who are scared of weightlifting in the first place because they think they're going to pack on a ton of muscle. And just to clarify, when I say heavy weights, I'm referring to weights that are challenging for you. This doesn't mean that you're lifting the heaviest weight possible or that you're lifting to failure. It's just something that is challenging. And what heavy looks like will be very different depending on the different exercises that you're doing. For example, a heavy weight on a squat would be very different from a heavy weight on bicep curls. And then another bonus myth that I want to quickly touch on here is when we compare lifting heavy weights versus light weights, many women prefer to lift light weights to help to tone their muscles without growing them. But this is also a myth. Muscle toning simply refers to building muscle and losing body fat. So don't listen to people if they tell you that you should lift light weights because that's going to help you tone. I would say for many people, it is most beneficial to lift heavy weights because this is going to help you to build your muscle strength. It's going to challenge you appropriately, and you can progressively overload over time. So my practical advice is to absolutely include strength training in your routine and to lift heavy weights. There are so many benefits to this, including building lean muscle, losing body fat, improving your body confidence, enhancing your overall fitness, and boosting your metabolism. Another tip is to surround yourself with other people who support and advocate for the benefits of weightlifting, because this will help to normalize this belief for you. So surround yourself with other friends who like to lift heavy weights and follow people on social media who lift heavy weights, because they can serve as an inspiration for you and living proof to debunk this myth. Don't be afraid of lifting heavy weights. It will make you strong and athletic and powerful. And the very last myth, myth number 5, is that you can achieve long-term sustainable results through quick fixes and fad diets. 86% of you were able to identify this myth. Through my personal experience, especially in the earlier stages of my fitness journey, I was constantly bombarded with quick fixes that never worked. I did everything from clickbait YouTube workouts, things with titles like "Get abs in 7 days." I also did short-term challenges like a 30-day squat challenge. And I even tried a cleanse one time after the holidays, which I will never do again. Through these experiences, I learned that quick fixes were not sustainable and they never delivered the results that they promised. Quick fixes may provide some results in the short term, but they will not be sustainable in the long term. And they can also be harmful. One way that quick fixes can be harmful is it can be discouraging if you feel like you're putting in all of this effort and not seeing the results that you want to see. And then the other issue with quick fixes is that you experience unsustainable results. I'm going to share a bit of an extreme example of this, which comes from the TV show The Biggest Loser. And if you're not familiar with The Biggest Loser, this is a reality TV show. And during the show, contestants lose lots of weight in a very short period of time. And this is going to reduce their basal metabolic rate, meaning those calories burned at rest, which I mentioned earlier. And then once the show is over, many participants actually regain the weight that they had lost during the show, because it's unrealistic for them to maintain this extreme calorie restriction and these intense amounts of exercise when they go back to their normal lives following the show. But the problem with this is they've lowered their basal metabolic rate, and then it doesn't increase proportionally when they regain the weight. So now they're stuck with this lower basal metabolic rate. The other issue is that when they regain the weight, they're regaining fat mass at a much faster rate than they are regaining muscle mass. So now at this point, the participants are back to their original weight, and they have a lower basal metabolic rate, and they have a higher body fat percentage because they put on more fat than they did muscle when they regained the weight. And this is going to make it even harder for them to lose weight the next time they try to do so. So I remember learning about this in my undergrad and being mind blown, like, what? That's so harmful. Why are they doing this to these people in this TV show? And it felt kind of hopeless. Like, what's the solution then? How do we prevent this from happening? And the practical advice here is to realize that no results are instant, and quick fixes can be very damaging. We need to focus on embracing delayed gratification versus instant gratification. We need to recognize that slower progress is actually much healthier and more sustainable, and that slow and steady really does win the race. Another piece of practical advice is to find what works for you. Find something that you actually enjoy doing, and this will be sustainable. Adherence to a fitness routine really is the most important part of a fitness routine. And the best routine is the one that you will actually do consistently over time. Interestingly, when I shared this myth on my Instagram, a couple of you actually responded, "It depends," meaning this myth that quick fixes can't produce long-term results may actually be a myth in some cases, but in other cases, quick fixes can help people achieve sustainable results. And one of you said that the reason for this is because for some people, quick fixes actually work for them because it's something they can actually stick to long term. They do this quick fix, they see results, they swear by it, and then they actually continue doing it in the long term. For example, those clickbait YouTube workouts that I mentioned before could actually work. They're not going to get you abs in 7 days, but let's say you find this video and it's short and efficient and it works for you and you can actually commit to it. That could actually get you long-term results. So really find what works for you. And then the other piece of advice is to focus on your healthy habits, focus on consistency over time. Another reason that one of you said it depends is because you interpreted this idea of quick fixes as small changes that you can make to your day-to-day routine. For example, swapping out soda with water and parking at a further away parking spot when you go places. And you said that by making these quick fixes and these small changes, this can actually serve as a way to build momentum and drive your long-term results, which I agree with. And I thought that was such an interesting interpretation. Remember, we're in this for life. We need to take a long-term approach in order to actually reap the benefits. And that's why it's called a healthy, active lifestyle. So for our community responses this week, I've already shared some of the results all throughout this episode. Now I'm just going to rapid fire through some of the myths that you shared with me when I asked you what are common fitness myths that you used to believe. The first myth that was submitted is all you need are resistance bands. Now, I think resistance bands are a great tool, especially for beginners, but I agree with you that there does come a certain point where it's difficult to progressively overload if you don't expand to other types of equipment or weights. The next myth was machines are for people who don't know what they're doing. This is so frustrating. I had a personal trainer tell me this once. I don't remember if I mentioned that on the podcast before, but it really discouraged me from using machines. And it's totally a myth because machines can actually be extremely helpful, whether you're a beginner or you're more advanced. You can absolutely include these into your fitness routine. One of you said protein bars are really good for you. When I started reading the sugar levels, I gasped. Yes, you totally need to read the ingredients because half the time, many of these protein bars are really just glorified chocolate bars. The next myth, you need to be in the gym for over 2 hours to have an effective workout or optimal gains, but this is unnecessary and burnout inducing. I totally agree. Short workouts absolutely can be very effective and they could be more sustainable in your routine. And then the last myth that was submitted, one of you said you have to bulk, meaning eat in a calorie surplus in order to build or gain muscle. Yes, although a slight calorie surplus can help you to build muscle, and you may need to have a slightly bigger calorie surplus if you have a difficult time gaining weight or building muscle, but you can totally build muscle without having to have this massive calorie surplus that is often advertised as bulking in the fitness industry. Instead, you just need to ensure that you're eating enough protein and training with intention. And to end things off, we'll do a quick Q&A. I asked you, what's a piece of advice that you find confusing or you're unsure of its truth? The first question was, always been curious about BCAAs. So BCAAs stands for branched chain amino acids, and these are 3 essential amino acids, essential meaning that your body can't produce it on its own. And the claim that is marketed is that BCAAs can support muscle building, muscle recovery, and reduce muscle soreness. And while this may be true, you likely don't need to supplement with BCAAs, but instead just ensure that you're eating enough protein each day because that's what's going to be more impactful. And like I said before, many people are not even hitting their protein targets. So ensure you have that in place first because that's much more important than supplementing with these additional amino acids. And also, if you avoid supplementing with them, then it's an easy way to save some money. I wouldn't say it's worth your money to go out and purchase these BCAAs necessarily. Also, when thinking about hitting your protein targets, other sources of protein that come from whole foods are probably a better source of protein compared to BCAAs. The next question was, I always wondered if cardio before or after your workout really had different effects. And the answer to this is it depends on your goals. Are you focused on prioritizing building muscle, or would you like to prioritize building your cardio endurance? Or are you trying to prioritize fat loss? For fat loss, it really doesn't make a difference if you do cardio before or after your strength training. And then for the other goals, do what matters to you more first. So if you're focused on building your cardio endurance, start with cardio, follow it with strength training, and then vice versa. And the reason for this is simply because you'll have more energy at the start of your workout, so you can dedicate more energy to it. And then once you've completed that part of the workout, you're probably a little bit more tired, and then you can focus on the part of your training that is not quite as much of a priority. That's it. There's no complex or interesting scientific explanation for it. It simply just has to do with your fatigue and energy levels. And the last question was, little broad, but gym shoes. Do I need flat or rounded? Do they make a difference in my lift? Flat shoes are generally recommended because it can help to improve stability and the contact that you're making with the ground when you're lifting. So think Converse, for example. That's often recommended as a flat shoe for lifting. And then shoes with more cushioning or a more rounded sole could be less stable. So think your typical running shoes with a thick sole. With that being said, don't let that be a barrier to entry. You can still get an effective lift in if you have thicker soles on your shoes. And to be honest, the soles of my shoes are pretty thick, and I should probably get shoes that are a little bit flatter. My shoes are comfortable. I don't feel very unstable, so it really isn't that big of a deal. So those are my rapid fire answers, and I can totally expand more on any of these questions if you would like in a future episode. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned something new and you are feeling much more knowledgeable after listening. Remember to always be critical of the fitness advice that you're receiving and do your own research to explore and learn more, and also seek out fitness advice from fitness experts. And in doing this, it can be very empowering to have this knowledge. The myths I shared today are just 5 of many fitness myths that are out there. I came up with a huge list of myths that I could talk about. So if you did like this episode, be sure to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening so you don't miss the next episode in the series where I share even more fitness myths. And also leave a comment letting me know a fitness myth that you used to believe. Thank you as always for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.